What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here to rank every single MVP season of the 2010s. I'm celebrating the 2010s on the Bottom Line View. This is the ranking of every MVP throughout this decade. Before I give you my rankings of the MVPs through the 2010s, make sure that you do Gronk spike the like button, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL countdowns just like this. And comment below your opinion. Do you agree with my rankings of the MVPs of this decade, or do you disagree? Let me know in the comment section below. Let's kick off the list. Ranking at the bottom of my MVP countdown for the 2010s. Unfortunately, I have to put somebody at the bottom of the list. And in last, at number 10, I have Matt Ryan of the 2016 season. Matt Ryan had a great year. He nearly threw for 5,000 yards. He nearly threw for 40 touchdowns. He had less than 10 interceptions on the season. He led the league in passer rating. He led the league in yards per attempt. He actually set an NFL record throwing to 13 different receivers. But he was the least impressive of all of these MVP campaigns, and I would give a lot of the respect to Kyle Shanahan and what he was able to do in this offensive scheme, putting Matt Ryan in a great position to execute this offense. And really, I would also argue that the MVP award should have gone to Aaron Rodgers or maybe even Tom Brady, who set the single-season touchdown-to-interception ratio record. Matt Ryan had a great year in 2017. I'm not trying to take anything away from him, and ultimately, he had a great playoffs as well. But I just can't put him above anybody else on this list, and ultimately had the least impressive MVP campaign. At number 9 on the MVP rankings of the 2010s, I have Tom Brady of 2017. Now, Tom Brady led the Patriots to a 13-3 record, the number 1 seed in the AFC. He led the Patriots to a league lead in yards and second in points. He had a pretty good supporting cast. I would say maybe one of the better ones of his career, and I think that enabled him to put up the numbers he did somewhat. You know, he had Josh McDaniels at offensive coordinator, the steady. He had Rob Gronkowski at tight end, still in his prime, at his peak. Dion Lewis and James White at running back were coming into their own, and Brandon Cooks was added to the offense in the offseason along with Danny Amendola and Chris Hogan at receiver. But he didn't have Julian Edelman, so part of the impressive part of Tom Brady's season is he didn't have that safety blanket of Julian Edelman in 2017. What Tom Brady was able to do here is become the oldest player ever to win the MVP award at 40 years old, which I think speaks to something that's different, more impressive than really numbers, more impressive than just a typical MVP year. The age that he was able to play this great at is truly incredible. So Tom Brady led the league in yards. He led the league in passing attempts at 40 years old. That's incredible. That speaks to how important he still was to this football team in 2017. And he was doing this with not a very good defense. This defense was 29th in yards, 30th in pass defense, 30th in plays allowed per drive. So Tom Brady, 2017, won that MVP award. I do believe he deserved it over a Carson Wentz or over some of the other guys that you may mention, but I don't think it's one of the more impressive ones of the decade. Number 8, as the 8th most impressive MVP campaign of the 2010s, I have Aaron Rodgers of 2014. Rodgers led the Packers to the 2nd seed in the NFC, a 12-4 record, and he led the Packers to number 1 in points, 6th in yards. What's impressive to me about this MVP season of Aaron Rodgers is his greatness as a gunslinger. His ability to throw 38 touchdowns, but only throw 5 interceptions. His ability to throw for almost 4,400 yards, but again, only 5 interceptions. 9.5 air yards per attempt, which led the NFL. A 1% interception percentage, which led the NFL. He had a 112 passer rating, which was near the top of the NFL. He set a record for passes without an interception at home in the 2014 season. And Rodgers does some physical things on the field that we haven't really seen many quarterbacks do, especially in 2014 before guys like Patrick Mahomes came into the league. We were speaking about Aaron Rodgers at this point as being in the conversation as the GOAT, and he really put himself in that conversation during this season in 2014. So 2014 is here at number 8. Not one of the most impressive statistically, but for what he did for the Packers was really, really great. At number 7, I have Adrian Peterson's 2012 season. This is the only running back on this entire list of this decade. I think that's the only one running back MVP season that we've ever had in a decade. I'm pretty strongly suggesting that right now. When looking at this, it had to take something amazing to break the trend of quarterbacks winning this award, right? Well, Adrian Peterson, all he did was run for 2,000 yards and nearly break the rushing yards record. And I still remember this season like it was yesterday. I mean, I was watching these games week after week, just like, how is he doing this? Christian Ponder was his quarterback, who had 18 touchdowns and 12 picks and didn't even throw for 3,000 yards. They were 31st in passing. Their defense was average. Percy Harvin was their leading receiver, who had 600 receiving yards. I mean, everybody was stacking the box, and Adrian Peterson was still going for 6 yards an attempt, and he was coming off an ACL. Honestly, speaking about this right now, I want to put him higher. I just can't, because there's been so many amazing MVP years throughout this decade. He still had 40 catches, which I believe were one of the most he's ever had in a season, because he's never been a true receiver. But what he was doing with the ball in his hands, whether that was exploding through the hole, making guys miss, running people over, Adrian Peterson had one of the best running back seasons we've ever seen in 2012. At number 7. At number 6, I constantly talk about this season because I feel like it's almost gone under the radar at this point. Cam Newton in 2015. Cam Newton led the Panthers to a 15-1 record. He led the Panthers to the number 1 seed in the NFC, first in points, first in rushing, and first in rushing touchdowns. He threw for 35 touchdowns. He ran for 10 touchdowns, the only season ever to have 30 passing touchdowns and 10 rushing touchdowns. He also ran for 632 yards. He had 4 game-winning drives, which led the league. He had a 7.1 touchdown percentage, which led the NFL. He only threw 10 interceptions, and his supporting cast was really not that great. He had a good defense, I will say that, but Greg Olsen was his leading receiver, who was good. Not Gronk, but good. You know, Jonathan Stewart, okay running back. He had Devin Funchess, Corey Brown, Ted Ginn, and Jericho Cotchery as his receivers. And he won the MVP. That's insane. This is when we were truly calling Cam Newton Superman. The most player of the week awards ever in a season, tied with Tom Brady. Cam Newton comes in at number 6. At number 5 on my MVP list, I have the 2019 season of Lamar Jackson. Now, I'm almost certain he will win the award, so I'm already placing him on this list. Lamar Jackson, in 16 games, although he only played 15, led the Ravens to a 14-2 record and the number 1 seed in the AFC. First in points on offense and the greatest rushing offense of all time statistically. 3,127 yards passing, 1,206 yards rushing. That's pretty good. That's the only season ever that we've seen 3,000 yards passing, 1,000 yards rushing by a quarterback. 36 passing touchdowns led the NFL. Then you add another 7 touchdowns rushing. That's 43 total touchdowns through the air or on the ground. Lamar Jackson also led the NFL in QBR with an 81.1 QBR. His supporting cast offensively, it really is nothing great. He really makes the most of it. Marquise Brown, Willie Snead, Boykin, Andrews, Boyle at tight end. Andrews really the leading receiver on this team. Mark Ingram's a good running back and Edwards behind him. But without Lamar Jackson, this offense is not what it is. Some records he did set. The first to throw 30 touchdowns and 1,000 yards rushing. And the first to rush for 1,000 and throw for 3,000. Lamar Jackson physically does some things on the football field we've never seen from a quarterback, including Michael Vick. Making guys miss with incredible quickness, almost like he's like Gale Sayers or Barry Sanders at quarterback. And he can throw deep down the field with accuracy and touch. He's the ultimate difference maker and game changer and comes in here at number 5. The 4th best MVP season of the 2010s is Tom Brady's 2010 NFL season. In 16 games, he led the Patriots to a 14-2 record and the number 1 seed in the AFC. Their offense ranked number 1 in points for, yards, and points per drive, coming in as the 15th best offense in NFL history. His stats include leading the league in touchdowns with 36, only throwing 4 interceptions, which at the time was the best touchdown to interception ratio of all time. He led the league in touchdown percentage, interception percentage, air yards per attempt, passer rating, and QBR. His supporting cast was not very good. Okay, he had Bill O'Brien as his offensive coordinator, which we know how good he is right now as an offensive coordinator. He had no Josh McDaniels at that moment. He had no 1,000-yard receiver as they traded Randy Moss 3 weeks into the season to the Vikings. They had Wes Welker, who was off of his ACL the season before. Deion Branch, who was a nobody at this point, who they just traded from Seattle for. They had 2 rookies at tight end, and Rob Gronkowski, who is Rob Gronkowski, but he was a rookie, and Aaron Hernandez, who is also a rookie, and LJ Crumpler. He had no running game. He had Danny Woodhead, who was an undrafted free agent, Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, the law firm, and Fred Taylor, who I think was almost 40 years old. His defense was awful, 30th in first downs, 30th in pass defense, 31st in first downs allowed, and 32nd on third down. His records include being the first player to be the unanimous MVP selection. Of course, the touchdown to interception ratio record, the most throws without an interception. He had 12 times a passer rating of 100 plus and led the NFL in 5 different categories. Tom Brady has maybe the most underrated season for an MVP that we've ever seen, because really, I don't think anyone talks about it because Tom Brady has been so great in other moments in his career that this one really is kind of underrated. At number 3 for the third best MVP season of the 2010s, Patrick Mahomes of 2018. We just saw it last year. In 16 games, he led the Chiefs to a 12-4 record and the number 1 seed in the AFC. The third all-time offense in points per game. 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns, only 12 picks, led the league in touchdown percentage, touchdowns of course, QBR, and air yards per attempt with nearly 10 air yards per attempt. That's insane. Supporting cast was pretty dang good, as you might expect. Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, Robinson, Connolly, Kelsey, Harris, Hunt, Williams. He had all those guys. So he definitely had help. He also had Andy Reid as his play caller. But for his first season in the NFL as a starter, he blew the NFL up and almost changed the way the position is played, from his ability to extend plays, throw with his left arm, throw with his right arm, throw on different angles, under duress, it doesn't matter. Patrick Mahomes took an offense in the Chiefs that was really good the year before to a phenomenal all-time great offense. He was the third to throw 50 touchdowns, the second to throw 50 touchdowns and 5,000 yards. He comes in at number 3. The second greatest MVP season of this decade is Aaron Rodgers in 2011. Rodgers, in 15 games, led the Packers to the number 1 seed in the NFC, a 14-1 record, 35 points per game. That's top 5 of all time. Aaron Rodgers probably could have had 5,000 yards if he would have played all of the games, but he didn't. He had 45 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, a touchdown percentage that led the NFL with 9 touchdown percentage, 9.2 yards per attempt, which also led the NFL, a 122.5 rating, which is Madden numbers, which is all-time passer rating in NFL history. He also had 257 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns throughout the course of the season, 48 total touchdowns if you're counting. His supporting cast was good at receiver. Nelson, Jennings, Cobb, Jones. I mean, that's stacked. But everywhere else, Joe Philbin is his offensive coordinator. He single-handedly got an offensive coordinating job and a head coaching job for Joe Philbin. There's no doubt about it. His left tackle was Marshall Newhouse, who we know he's not very good. He had no running game. That's Starks and Grant at running back. And his defense was awful. They were 32nd in yards, 31st in yards per drive, and 30th in first downs allowed. His records include never having more than 1 interception in a game the entire season, 100 passer rating, 12 straight games. It's absurd. 5 4-touchdown games, NFL record passer rating, the third best QBR of all time. Aaron Rodgers has the second best MVP season, which I feel like I spoke about Tom Brady being an underrated season. This season, because I think it was a long time ago in this decade, might be the most underrated MVP season of all time, period. At number 1 is the best MVP season of the 2010s. It has to be 2013 Peyton Manning, right? I mean, He set like every record known to man. So 5,477 yards, that's the most in NFL history in a season. 55 touchdowns, the most in NFL history in a season. 115 rating, which is not too shabby. He led the NFL in touchdown percentage, QBR, yards per game, yards, touchdowns, rating. I mean, what didn't he lead the NFL in? He led the Broncos to a 13-3 record in the AFC, number one all-time offense in points per game, 8 4-touchdown games, 11 3-touchdown games, and a 7-touchdown game in the first week of the season. 4 400-yard games, 12 300-yard football games. His supporting cast was really good, but when really looking back on it, he made a lot of these guys a lot better. Adam Gase, I mean, we know what he is now, but he made him a lot better. He made him a legit head coach. Still today, people talk about it. Julius Thomas, he was nothing when he left the Broncos. An older Welker, but still a pretty good one. Eric Decker, Demaryius Thomas, good players. Running backs like Marino and Ball, who were okay at times, but never anything spectacular. Manning always made players who are good, great. So at number 1, the greatest MVP season of all time, it's Peyton Manning of 2013. Thanks, guys, for watching. It's been Mitch of the Bottom Line View. Subscribe, like the video, and we'll see you later. Peace.